Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So today we are going to be talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is going to be my spoiler talk review. So again, this is going to be your warning. If you have not seen the movie, make sure you go ahead and check out my non-spoiler review that I already did of the movie. I don't mention any spoilers in there at all, so you feel free to go ahead and check that out. Come back to this video after you're done, or if you're still watching, that means you've already seen the film, or I'm going to assume you just don't care, or you're just ignoring the title of this video. But anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk some spoilers, because there's definitely a lot to talk about with this movie.
You have no idea what's about to happen.
The first thing that we gotta talk about, come on. We gotta talk about Elizabeth Olsen playing the Scarlet Witch in this movie. Holy hell, does she just knock it out of the park with this role. My god, so many things to talk about with her, just her character alone. So we see Doctor Strange and Wong early on in the movie. They realize that America Chavez, she's being pursued by someone using witchcraft. So Strange, he seeks out Wanda because obviously she has a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. And when we get introduced to Wanda for the first time in this movie, which is pretty early on in the film, I actually really love that sequence because you don't realize it's a dream at first, but you see Wanda with her kids. You know, they're like baking something, I believe, having a great time. She goes to tuck them in for bed, and then the scene transitions and just like the music cuts out. You see Wanda waking up in her bed, and I thought that was just, you're like, instantly it just hit me in the feels. You're like, oh man, you feel so bad for her because she's by herself, she's lost everything again. So I thought that was a great transition. Then you have Doctor Strange who shows up, and they're in this, we find out it's an apple orchard, and starts talking to Wanda. At first, she thinks that he's come to talk to her about the events of WandaVision, what happened with Westview, and he's like, no, that's not what I want to talk about. I'm here because someone is going after this child that we found, America Chavez, and they're using witchcraft, and I really want to get your help with this situation. And Wanda's like, no, like, you can get another adventure. You guys, you've seen some of this from the trailers that we've gotten for the film. And then pretty quickly we find out that Wanda's actually behind everything. And me personally, I fucking loved that reveal. I thought that was great. I know I've seen some people saying that it seemed to just kind of happen too quickly. And I just have to disagree with that, but I guess it's my opinion. For me with this character, I feel like they have been building up, from Wanda, from Age of Ultron all the way up to this point. We got WandaVision. And I just feel like they've been kind of building up to this moment with this character. So I don't think it was a quick reveal at all. And I just love that whole sequence when she uses her magic and reveals that it's actually not a orchard. Well, technically it might still be an orchard, but everything's just red. It's, it looks like basically they're in hell. And that was just such a great moment. And as we get kind of towards the end of the conversation, she basically tells Strange, she's like, hey, you're going to give up America Chavez peacefully. And then Strange goes, well, what if we don't? And then Wanda says a line, and I might be paraphrasing here, but she says something like, it won't be Wanda that comes for her then. It'll be the Scarlet Witch. Oh, man. And that's just one of many lines that she has in this movie that are just fucking brilliant. Again, Elizabeth Olsen, she nailed it with this role. She's always been great, but I think this might be my favorite performance from her so far. So we end up going to Camotage where we see Wong, he's talking to Strange and just, explaining the Scarlet Witch to some of these sorcerers, just explaining how powerful she is. And then, she shows up, you see that cloud, appearing over the place. You hear like the almost like banshee screeching, the wind, when she's getting ready, like she's showing up and coming out of the clouds. So the horror aspects in this film, and we're going to talk more about that in this spoiler talk, but the horror aspects were great. And so, she's there, Strange goes up to talk to her, trying to reason with her one more time, and the Scarlet Witch, she tells Strange, she's like, I've had to kill my husband multiple times. Like, you don't know what I've had, like, the sacrifices that I've had to make. Don't talk to me about sacrifices. And then finally, after she's just like, all right, I've had enough of this shit, she says, this is me being reasonable. And then Wanda basically just fucking wrecks shop on the place. And I was like, yes, give it to me now. And as all these people are, she's killing a bunch of these people. I thought that whole sequence was great. Oh, and the moment where she, Strange is like, she's trying to get into their minds, and you get that scene where, she's floating up in the air, but then, and there's this one sorcerer guy, like, on the, the ground, and all of a sudden you're looking at him, and then you just see Wanda show up behind him, and she just whispers, "Run." Oh my god. Like, I mean, I could just go on and on in this, the spoiler talk about just the Scarlet Witch alone. Like, there's so many great moments in this film. Basically, if you're a Scarlet Witch Wanda fan, like I said in my non-spoiler review, for the most part, I think a lot of people, if you are, that's like your favorite character like it is for me, I think you're going to enjoy the hell out of this movie because just the performance that she puts together with this character, it's insane. So basically, the rest of this movie, to kind of sum it up, what it's about, for the most part, is that you have Wanda. She's trying to find another universe that she can go to where her kids are alive and well, and that she can just live with them there. That's basically all she wants, and so she wants to get America Chavez because America Chavez has the ability to travel from universe to universe, and so she needs her in order to be able to go technically to these other universes. So Strange and Wong, they're trying to protect, going from different universe to universe, trying to protect America from Wanda. Basically, the whole plot of this movie, going into spoilers. Another one of my favorite moments too, after kind of the fight all happens and she's kind of chasing after the characters inside the different, parts of the building or the Camartage, we have a sequence where she's in the mirror dimension and she's using the reflections to get out. And at one point, straight out of the ring for me, she sticks her arm out of this gong, and then she ends up crawling out and like contorts her body, and she comes out like all cut up and everything. And I was just like, that is literally Samara coming out of the well from the ring. So well done. Again, if you are a horror fan, I think that there's a lot of stuff in this movie that you're really going to enjoy. Different sequences like that. The movie, because I've seen some people, they're like, it's not a horror movie. And no, it's not a straight up horror movie. But there is definitely a lot of horror elements in this movie for sure. That I think that if you're a horror fan like me, that you will appreciate, I think. So after, the whole situation, the big fight at the Camartage, we have America Chavez and Doctor Strange. They end up going through all the different multiverses, which at one point we see the Living Tribunal, which was really cool. We saw that in one of the TV spot trailers, which that kind of sucks if you guys did end up seeing that. But we saw that briefly when they were going through all the different universes, and then they end up landing in Earth, or the universe 838. And that's where we get our Bruce Campbell cameo for the film. Papa Pizza? Whatever his name is in the movie. I don't know why. Something pizza guy. But anyways, the most important part is that Doctor Strange, he gets annoyed with him and basically has his hand start, he starts beating up himself. And I was like, oh, I got a good laugh out of that because that is definitely a tribute to the Evil Dead films where Ash, his hand gets possessed and starts, going after him in those movies. So I really enjoyed that, the cameo. We then end up going to the Sanctum, and America's like, well, they see a statue of Strange, and you see that he's dead in this universe. And so she's like, well, if you're not in charge of the Sanctum, then who is? And you see Mordo come out, and at first it's like, oh, wait, like, is he, kind of the same Mordo from our universe where he hates Strange? And he isn't. He's like, oh, hey, brother, how's it going? And, he ends up bringing them inside. And when he's talking to them, definitely one of the highlights, one of my favorite scenes in the movie for so many reasons, but he starts talking to America and Doctor Strange, and he explains how there is a spell on the Darkhold that the Scarlet Witch can use, and it's called Dreamwalking, where basically she can go through the different universes and she can possess another version of herself in one of those universes and basically puppeteer them so that way she can wreak havoc in those universes. And man, oh man, I got fucking chills from the very first time that I was watching this movie, watching this scene where he's talking about this. You see all the candles and everything goes out, really creepy setting, and then you get that great, probably my favorite track from the score from Danny Elfman on the the score, where you just have like the music kind of like fading in and out. You have the editing where you see Doctor Strange, America Chavez, and then you see Wanda kind of like in the background, and she's floating and doing the spell. Oh, it definitely It's so tough because there's a lot of great things in this movie for me, but that is definitely one of my favorite scenes for sure. So after this whole thing, happens, because we find out Mordo ended up poisoning them or drugging them with the tea that they had. And after this happens, we see them brought into a pair of holding cells where we find out that we meet another version of Christine, who in this universe, she's a doctor working for the Baxter Corporation, which that got a reaction out of several people in my theater just like that. They were like, did they just say Baxter? So that was pretty cool. And we end up finding out, she points out that this is Earth 838, I believe she says, and says that our universe is 616. So that was, again, another really cool Easter egg, for comic book fans. And then Mordo ends up bringing Strange to meet the Illuminati, which some of them we already knew. So we knew Professor X was going to be in there. We knew that from, it was like the second trailer, I believe, or the first official trailer that we actually got. So we knew that he was going to be in there, but it was still pretty fucking epic because we get the X-Men theme playing behind him. So him showing up on his yellow wheelchair from the animated show, that was really, really cool. Still got reactions from people in my audience. We got Black Bolt from the Inhumans, which I was kind of surprised. I was like, well, he's in the comics, but I wasn't sure if they were going to touch that character, just where the TV show kind of failed. So I didn't think he was actually going to show up, so that was really cool to see him. Then we get Captain Carter, which we knew she was going to be in it because her shield, somewhere, I forget where it's on the poster, but her shield's in the poster. So I had a pretty good idea that she was going to be in the movie, but that was just really cool to see Haley Atwell come and play this live version of the character, because I saw some people thinking it was maybe going to be animated, maybe live action, so that was cool. She, I don't think she got as many reactions as some of the other ones, but it was pretty cool to see, especially with the whole, if you watched What If. If you haven't, definitely go check that episode out with Captain Carter in there for sure. And then we got Captain Marvel, which was actually Maria Rambeau in this universe. And then, obviously, Mordo's one of them. And then, finally, we got John Krasinski revealed as Reed Richards. And that, by far, I would say, got the biggest pop as far as the audiences go. That's been a casting that everyone's been asking for a while. So it was really cool to see him show up. I was like, holy shit, they actually really did it. And they end up talking to Doctor Strange and explain that, so Doctor Strange, he didn't really die in the fight with Thanos. In a way he did, but what really happened basically was Doctor Strange used the Darkhold to try and find a way to stop Thanos in their reality, and he ended up getting corrupted, and so the Illuminati, they basically made the decision that he had to be put down, and so Black Bolt ended up, you get a scene where it shows him and he says, I'm sorry, and he ends up disintegrating Doctor Strange. So that's actually what really happened. And then he's like, well, why is there a statue out there for me? And Captain Carter says something along the lines that everyone needs a hero. So they basically did that to cover up what really happened to Doctor Strange in this universe. And Strange, he's telling the Illuminati, he's telling them about, the Scarlet Witch, she's on her way, and, you guys got to get everyone out of here. She's going to destroy this place. And everyone there, they're like, no, we're not, we can handle your witch. You're the one that we're actually really worried about. And that's when Wanda shows up, and I was like, oh boy, shit's about to go down. So before we get to that, though, I gotta actually back up real quick, because before Wanda actually shows up to the Illuminati headquarters, the reason that she ends up going there is because before this, we see that in our universe, she's doing her spell, and she has Wong tied up on a bunch of ropes, and then one of the other sorcerers, which I can't remember the name of the character, apologize, but she comes in and she's like, oh, I'm going to destroy the Darkhold, and Wong's like, no, I got to do it. She's like, no, you can't do it. So she runs up, takes the book, stabs it, and she instantly dies. And so the Darkhold's destroyed. Wanda's obviously pissed, and she's like, I need to find a way to be able to do this spell. So she threatens to kill a bunch of other people, and Wong's like, I will take you to where the spells were originated from, and that was Mount Wundagore, which I kind of thought that we were going to go there, because we saw a bit of that in the trailers, or what it seemed like it was, and we end up going there. Wong explains that Chthon was the originator of the Darkhold, and his spells are all transcribed here, and then we end up seeing that We see all those demons that are in the trailer, which we thought were maybe Wanda and Wong were going to be fighting, tag teaming up with each other, but then you quickly realize that they start bowing down to Wanda, and this is basically a throne for the Scarlet Witch. So that was really cool. And then from there, Wanda, she ends up dreamwalking again, taking possession of herself, which is with, her kids, Billy and Tommy. And by the way, that possession scene, when she first initially possesses the other version of herself, was so Sam Raimi, Drag Me to Hell, Evil Dead vibes, because when she's getting possessed, can't talk, she's walking down like the back of her house, and as she's walking by, there's one point where she kind of like looks over. At first, like the ceiling light lamp is kind of spinning around, you're hearing this like creepy noises, and then you look over and there's a picture frame with a picture of Wanda in there, and it's looking this way, and I said this, I believe, in my non-spoiler review, it's looking this way, and then it just goes and turns and looks right at the camera, and I was like, oh man, like, fucking yes, Sam Raimi. Just, if you love Sam Raimi's style and some of the stuff that he does in his films, there's definitely several of his signature moments scattered throughout this movie, and that was one of them for sure. And so the Scarlet Witch, she ends up possessing her, and then she goes into the Illuminati headquarters, and that's when we get another one of the best battle scenes in this movie, where Wanda ends up single-handedly taking down the Illuminati. She confronts, first, like, John Krasinski's like, Wanda, you gotta stop, you possessed an innocent woman. And she has this line that might have been the most bone-chilling line for me from her in this movie, where John Krasinski says, I know how it is, I have kids, something along those lines. And Wanda looks at him and goes, is their mother still alive? John Krasinski, Reed Richards, goes, yes. Good. There will be someone left to raise them. And I was just like, oh shit. And I wasn't the only one in the theater. Especially, it was fun watching it the second and third time, because when I did, you could hear the reaction of people around me, and they were all kind of like... And then Reed Richards, he looks over at Black Bolt and he says, basically, Black Bolt, just by using his mouth, can kill you with one whisper. And Wanda just looks at him and goes, what mouth? And then you see Black Bolt doesn't have a mouth anymore, and he freaks out and he ends up killing himself. His head just fucking implodes on himself, and that, every time that I've seen this movie, has got a reaction out of people, because you just see like his eyeballs like kind of fill up with blood, and he just drops to the ground dead. And I was just like, oh my god, what? I was just surprised, because the MCU has had some dark moments sprinkled throughout, but by far they have not done anything like this up to this point. So it just kind of caught me off guard, because trust me, I've seen violent stuff in other kinds of movies and things like that, but when it comes to the MCU, it definitely caught me off guard a little bit. So that happens. Then Reed Richards, he tries to take her out, and she just turns him into fucking not Swiss cheese, but string cheese. He's dead. And then you just have Captain Carter and you have Captain Marvel. They put up a little bit more of a fight, but Captain Carter, she throws her shield at one point. Wanda takes it, throws it back at her, and it cuts her in half. You don't necessarily actually see it, but then you see the shield come back, and there was blood on the shield. And I was just like, what? And again, I wasn't the only one in the theater. And then Captain Marvel, she ends up fighting with her for a little bit, basically like strips off all of her armor and everything, and then makes a building fall, or a statue fall on top of her. So she completely wipes out the Illuminati. Professor X, then he's the last one to show up, and he does his mind thing where he goes into the head of Wanda, trying to save the good Wanda that's in there. And while he's inside her head, all of a sudden you see the red mist start, kind of flowing in. You hear that creepy music, and then our good Wanda, she's under like this like rubble, and she disappears. And we get a great jump scare here, where all of a sudden this Scarlet Witch, she shows up behind Professor X, like fucking full-on demon-looking thing, and just breaks his neck. And I was just like, holy shit. And after Wanda ends up, destroying all the Illuminati, you have Strange, America, and Christine. They're trying to escape. They're trying to get to the Book of Ashanti, which that was, brought up in this movie as well, which was really cool. and you get this great scene where they're running from Wanda, going through these tunnels. Wanda is covered in blood. She's going through these tunnels. She's hobbling because of the battle with Captain Carter and Captain Marvel. She's got glass, I believe. I mean, she's walking with like bare feet, so she's kind of like hobbling, and you know, it's kind of dark like in these tunnels. Obviously, you just see her like red eyes, and like this is some of the stuff where it's like if you, I could definitely see if you have like little kids bringing them to this movie, some of the imagery as far as just like the Scarlet Witch, it's pretty freaking creepy for an MCU film. Definitely the scariest stuff that I think that they've done up to this point, and I was just all there for it. That whole sequence where she's chasing them throughout the tunnels, that was great. So eventually, Strange, America, and Christine, they end up getting to the Book of Ashanti, but then Wanda, or Scarlet Witch, she shows up, destroys the Book of Ashanti pretty easily. That was the one thing I was like, well, damn, that book kind of got destroyed pretty easily. I was like, that was a little weird. But kind of like a small, nitpick for me. And then she ends up sending Strange, Christine to another universe, and then she takes America Chavez and throws her back to our actual universe where she's out Mount Wundagore. So when Doctor Strange and Christine, they end up getting sent to another universe where it looks like this reality is kind of collapsing in on itself. This is where Strange ends up meeting, I believe this is Sinister Strange. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, down in the comments. But ends up running into Sinister Strange, and he's like, hey, he sees that he has the Darkhold, and he's like, hey, I gotta use that thing. I gotta dream walk to my reality. And that's when this Strange tells him that the Darkhold extracts a heavy toll on its user, and we see a third eye pop up on this Strange. So they have, which I thought, and I know some people could maybe think it's like a little cheesy, but they end up having a fight where they're going back and forth, and they're using musical notes. And at one point, it kind of sounds like the Phantom of the Opera, I believe. They're fighting back and forth. That was really cool. I love that battle. And then, again, very Sam Raimi for sure. And then Strange, he ends up defeating Sinister Strange. He blasts him through the window. He falls down, and he gets impaled on the fence. Again, just some of the stuff where it's like definitely way darker than anything the MCU has done up to this point. You don't usually see people getting impaled in some of the other movies like this. So Strange ends up using the Darkhold to track down where America Chavez is, finds out that she's in trouble, and so he's like, hey, I'm going to use the Darkhold to dreamwalk. And Christine's like, but don't you have to have a living version in our universe in order to be able to do that? And he says, something like, who said anything about them being living? And so we see early on in the movie where Defender Strange, the first one that, showed up in the beginning of the movie, where he died, buried him earlier on in the movie, breaks out of the ground, again, very, Evil Dead, breaks out of the ground, and we see Zombie Strange, which I kind of thought that was going to maybe be kind of a villain, maybe in this movie, and we're going to see, towards the end, which we do see it towards the end, but I thought it was going to be a villain or something like that. So he's actually dreamwalking using this character, but when he initially does it, the souls of the damned end up showing up, and they're like, this is forbidden, you can't be doing this, and they start attacking him, and then they come into the real world with Christine. That whole sequence was really creepy. I love the design of these demon creatures as well. Again, I'm saying this a million times in this review, but very Sam Raimi-ish, Drag Me to Hell vibes for sure with those. And so Strange, or Zombie Strange, he ends up finally getting control of them and uses them as a cloak to be able to fly over to Mount Wundagore. So when Strange gets there, he tells America to trust her powers. She actually knows what she's doing. She just hasn't realized it. And I want to talk about this one sequence. I didn't realize it initially when I saw the movie for the first time, but it's something that I noticed the second time, and I could be very well reading into this thing way more than I probably should be. Who knows? But you know what? But hey, I'm going to go with it because I thought it was cool. So at this point, America Chavez, she gets up and she kind of gets into a little fight with the Scarlet Witch. So she ends up going over, she hits her a couple times, and she's like, oh yeah. And Scarlet Witch kind of looks at her and just shakes her head and goes, mm-mm. And when America hits her at one point, she punches open a star portal where it looks like that the portal that Wanda almost falls into, she's kind of leaning over. That looks like straight up, that looked like a hell dimension or hell universe. So my whole thing with that, seeing it the second time, I was like, oh, that's some interesting, imagery right there, because you could almost kind of see it as where Wanda, she's standing on the ledge before she kind of like pops back up, is this, the Scarlet Witch kind of on the verge of almost like going full evil, becoming almost like a demon of sorts, and kind of, on the verge of tipping into that, kind of state of mind. And then she ends up, slightly coming back. She's not completely there yet, but she's definitely getting there. I don't know. I thought of that the second time that I saw it, and I thought that was a pretty cool aspect that maybe they weren't going for it, but that's what I took from the film, and I thought that was really interesting. So let me know what you guys think as far as that goes. And then eventually America, she realizes that she's not going to be able to obviously beat Wanda, so she decides to take her to see her kids, and Wanda, she looks at her and she's like, "What have you done?" And then sees, Billy and Tommy in the universe where she took her, one of her other cells, the original version I believe she tried possessing. So she, she flips her and she's like, "They're my kids." And she basically scares the shit out of Billy and Tommy. And it isn't until, she snaps at them at one point and they start crying. You can see that they're really terrified of her. And that's when finally she realizes that she has in fact become the monster. And, so she just really, she's completely broken, defeated, and she just kind of sits down, looks up. It's one of the scenes again that we get from the trailer where she's looking at her other self, and the actual Wanda from that universe looks at her and just says, "Know that they will be loved." I love the scene. I thought it was such a beautiful scene, just with her kind of realizing how far that she has gone up to this point because the Darkhold has corrupted her. So I thought that was a really, really well done scene. And so Wanda, or the Scarlet Witch, she looks at Zombie Strange. She tells him that, she's realized what she's done and she's going to destroy the Darkhold so that way, and Mount Wundagore, so that way no one else can be tempted by its power ever again. And so the place starts collapsing in on itself, but, because I see a lot of people are thinking that the Scarlet Witch is dead. And a couple things there. So one, when the rocks and everything start falling down, you notice that if you pay attention closely, when the walls and everything are coming down, you don't actually see Scarlet Witch get everything's falling down, but you don't see her die, and you see a little red blip. To me, I think that she either just buried herself, whatever, or she teleports out of there or something, because I just don't think, there's no way in hell that they're going to kill off this character. I mean, they can do a couple things. So if they decided to kill off our Scarlet Witch, our Wanda, I guess they could do that, and then they could just bring another Wanda from one of these other universes, and that could be our Wanda going forward. But I don't think that they're going to kill the Scarlet Witch, because they built it up to this point. We just barely got the Scarlet Witch in WandaVision. I don't think they're going to take that character out quite yet. So I think that she's still alive, and she might go into isolation or something. They might be building up to the Children's Crusade from the Young Avengers. They might be doing that storyline possibly, where she kind of disappears and they end up finding her. Whether it's probably going to be a little while before we see her character, unfortunately. But I think they might go down one of those lines. But I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Do you think that they actually killed the Scarlet Witch? Or do you think that she escaped, my theory that she actually is still alive and either went off somewhere or she just sealed herself and, she's in there but not dead? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. So then at the very end of the movie, we see, they go back to Carmitage and we see America Chavez, and she's training to become a sorcerer. I thought that was kind of, that was interesting. So see where they're going to go with that character. But again, mentioned in my non-spoiler review, I really liked Xochitl Gomez in this role. I thought she was great as America Chavez, especially making her MCU debut. So I'm definitely curious to see where they're going to go with that character. And then we have an interesting conversation with Wong and Strange, and Wong ends up talking to Strange, and he asks him, he's like, "Hey, so are you feeling okay? Because of, you did have to use the Darkhold, and it does, it extracts a heavy toll on its user, and Strange is like, no, I'm fine. And then we get to one of the actual last shot of the film before we get to the post-credit scenes, and we see Strange, he's walking down the street, and all of a sudden this, music cues up, and you see him drop down almost like in pain, and then you see the third eye open up on his forehead. I was like, okay, so that's obviously he was affected by the Darkhold because everyone who touches it has been. So really I was curious to see what they're going to do with that going forward in Doctor Strange 3 or just, any of his other projects that he's going to show up in. So the first post-credit scene that we get with this movie, it definitely confused a lot of people, I know for sure. So Charlize Theron, she shows up. All of a sudden Strange, she's like walking down the street and you hear, she says something that I can't remember the exact line, but turns around, sees her, walks up, and she's like, we need to fix this. You caused an incursion, slices open, a hole in reality, and we see what is the dark dimension. And so, for those of you who aren't familiar with the character of Clea, which is, is the character that Charlize Theron plays, so she is actually the Sorcerer Supreme in the dark dimension, and she is actually the niece of Dormammu. And at one point, I believe in the comics that they actually they have a relationship, and I believe they get married. So there's obviously setting up a lot with that whole aspect. I'm wondering if maybe they're going to be going into Secret Wars, if that's something that I'm sure at some point they're definitely going to tackle. But that's kind of what's going on with that first post-credit scene, if you didn't know who the character was. And then we had the second post-credit scene, which I know a lot of people were like, oh, this is like one of the stupidest post-credit scenes for Marvel. And I don't blame some of you guys for that because, again, if you're not a Sam Raimi fan, if you're not an Evil Dead fan, it's kind of a shout out to that again because you see Bruce Campbell and finally, his hand is punching him a couple times and then it stops and he just looks and he's like, it's over! And again, just a shout out to the Evil Dead films, with Bruce character, the Ash character from that movie. So I thought that was pretty funny, but they maybe could have done something else because you did have to wait until the very end of the credits to see that. So I know some other people were probably looking for something else, but I did get a good laugh out of that. And I know at least my first time watching it, the crowd did laugh, but I have seen a lot of people saying, these end credit scenes sucked. But yeah, so that is going to wrap up my spoiler talk of Multiverse of Madness. So yes, there was a shit ton of stuff to talk about in here. Again, the movie has definitely gotten mixed reviews, and while it disappoints me, because as you guys can see, I freaking love the movie. I know it's not perfect. It's definitely, there is aspects I wish that it could have been a little bit longer, because there is times where it feels maybe a little rushed, so I wish it could have been longer. Hopefully we get a director's cut or something. That would be cool to just see all the different missing scenes, because it sounds like there's about 25-30 minutes that was cut out. But overall, I went into this movie, like I said, I wanted a good Doctor Strange movie. I got that. I wanted to see quite a bit of Scarlet Witch, because that's what it looked like the trailers were promising. I got that. I was hoping that Wanda was going to wreck shop in this film. I got that. I'm a big horror fan, and I was really hoping we were going to get a darker MCU movie, and I got that. So that is why I gave this movie a 9 out of 10. There's just a lot that I really, really enjoyed about this movie. And I know, like I said, I think the last I looked, it has a 75 or something % for the critics for Rotten Tomatoes, and the audience was 87. So it's definitely gotten a little bit of mixed reviews, and I was kind of surprised and disappointed. But hey, what can I say? I freaking love the movie. I've already seen it 3 times. I'm definitely going to see it probably at least once more before it leaves theaters, and then I'm obviously going to be buying this on Blu-ray, 4K when it comes out. So let me know. I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. What were some of your favorite moments from this movie? What was your favorite Scarlet Witch, moment? That's my favorite character. I want to hear what your guys, her favorite scene from the movie. And I just want to hear all of your spoiler thoughts. Let me know down below in the comments for sure. If you guys are new to the channel, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. That really helps. And if you guys can, again, drop a comment. Hit that like button, because it really, really helps out with the algorithm, and where there has already been 1 million people that have done Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness reviews, mine's definitely going to get buried, unfortunately, with the YouTube algorithm. So if you guys can do that, it really helps out. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.